It started. It's really a pleasure to see you all here and to the 21st of our conversations. And I should say, I'm Dietrich Neumann. I'm the director of the John Nicholas Brown Center for Public Humanities and Cultural Heritage. And we've had a lot of fun so far. Many of you have come to many of these conversations with artists and architects and writers and different publics from all parts of Providence. And I must say, I've really looked forward to tonight for a long time. We had, the night with Avery Willis Hoffman, the inaugural artistic director of the Brown Arts Institute, and we had planned her visit already for last semester, and then you got very busy both with starting the institute at Brown and your amazing work at the Armory in New York still. And another reason was that we actually had never met in person until tonight. We had many Zoom conversations, and it's really great to meet you finally, so this was fantastic. And I also really look forward to telling you a little bit about her CV, her amazing trajectory to this point, which is just really quite wonderful. And you were in high school, and you went on a school exchange to Gloucester in England, and I think you got a way to appreciate British humor and British academic life, etc. And then Avery returned to the United States and went to Stanford University and got her bachelor in classics in English there and graduated with honors and university distinction. And then she returned to England on a Marshall Scholarship, which is handed out to about 40 scholars a year from all over the United States. So it's a huge honor. She went to Balliol College in Oxford, and I should say this is one of the oldest and most amazing colleges in Oxford. Oxford is founded in the 13th century, 1263 or something like that, and it looks exactly how you imagine these things to look, with a huge dining hall, wooden beams, and a Gothic facade. It's just absolutely incredible.
Harry Potter now. It's very Harry Potter.
Exactly. And there she got first a master's and then a PhD in classical languages and literature, and wrote both a master's thesis and a PhD thesis on different aspects of the Greek tragedian Euripides. And perhaps not surprisingly, she was elected president of the Oxford Classical Drama Society, and there she produced, as a student still, a number of plays: Medea, Much Ado About Nothing, The Tempest, Orestes, and many others. And then she went on to a stellar career in theater, worked for Peter Sellers' company as dramaturg, assistant director, plays such as Othello and Said, and a number of festivals in Vienna and elsewhere. It's a very long CV, I'll make it very quick here. But at the same time, she also worked for the Clinton Global Initiative as a special projects manager, creating films for them and managing events with hundreds of VIPs. And 2010 to 15, she worked with a firm of Ralph Applebaum on the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. You all know this building, designed by the amazing Dave Adjei, and she was in charge of project development with this firm, so very central to the whole operation. And then she went on to New York, to the Park Avenue Armory, where she was inaugural program director and created amazing work with Theaster Gates, with Carrie Mae Weems and many others, 5 seasons of interrogations of forms, a series of conversations and performances and large-scale gatherings and symposia. She's also the tour producer for the Gospel of James Baldwin and has her own company, Avery Productions. And there's much, much more, and we can ask her about all of this, of course, afterwards. I should say on a final note, she met her husband, Matt, wonderful guy. It seems I haven't met him in person, on the F train heading to Brooklyn in New York on a Friday the 13th, and they got married 3 years later. And now they have 2 children and live in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And please help me welcome Avery Willis Hoffman.
Thank you so much, Dietrich. Lovely to meet you all. I thought, if you don't mind, a very quick round of who you are, just like to place who you are in the audience, just your name and your affiliation with Brown or Providence. So we'll start with you, because you're right in front of us.
Awesome. My name is James. I'm a junior studying economics and biology at Brown.
I'm Ellery. I'm a senior studying public health at Brown. I'm Grace. I'm a Providence resident.
I'm Mary. I'm a Providence resident, and I'm keen on architecture, so I'm very interested to know how you're going to use that building.
Yeah.
Alito, I'm Lily. I'm a mixed media artist, residency fellow, graduating in a couple months at RISD. This is my daughter Lyra.
I'm glad she's out.
I totally hear you. I feel like my daughter would be saying the same thing.
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm also a RISD graduate from the Global Arts and Culture Department, and I teach history and architecture at RISD, and I'm also a documentary filmmaker.
Kathy and Mike Webster, and we're just live in Smithfield. We're just interested.
We go anywhere the teacher goes.
Good plan, good plan.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm new to Providence and Brown, and I'm a colleague of Avery's at the Brown Arts Institute.
Jim Madison, Pawtucket resident. Same thing, I enjoy the matrix presentations. Like history, like architecture, I like what we're learning.
And I'm Barbara Benson. I'm born and raised in Providence. I'm just in love with the city.
I'm Ellie, I'm retired RN, and I've always been involved with the arts, but more so now that I've been retired. And there's oodles to do in retirement. It's amazing, it's amazing, never leave.
Thank you.
I'm Anthony. I live here. I teach art.
I'm Diana, a public humanities fellow and a native Rhode Islander.
I'm Taylor. I live in the area and I'm a writer and teacher.
I'm Art. I'm retired. I'm a culture vulture. That's about it. And one thing, so I don't hear very well, so when you speak,
yes,
if you
thank you
could
for
speak
saying
up, that'd be wonderful.
Yep, thank you.
I'm Roberta, and I'm a photographer.
I'm Janet, and I'm retired too, and a longtime Providence resident, and my sister Pat talked me into coming, and I'm glad I did.
Thank you, Pat.
And I'm Pat, Patricia, and artist, teacher, and also alumna of Brown.
I'm David. I like Greek theater.
I'm Vivian Neumann. I'm Dietrich's wife.
I'm Ana Carolina, visiting scholar from Brazil at Brown.
I'm Ted. I'm a filmmaker and a visiting professor at Brown.
My name is Nan. I live in Providence.
Yes, I'm an undergrad from Brown. I'm originally interested in art and architecture.
I'm Lucy. I'm a master's student here of public humanities.
I guess I'll start. Hi, Avery. I'm Hillary. I'm a master's student in public humanities and a BIA fellow.
I'm Sergio. I come from Spain, and I'm also in the Global Arts and Cultures program at RISD.
I'm Anna. I'm a Brown alum and a local artist.
Beautiful. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight, and I'm happy to be lucky number 21. Since it's St. Patrick's Day, my husband is Irish. He told me I should say lucky 21. I don't know if that's a real thing, but lucky 21, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. So thank you. I've got a couple computers going here, so bear with me if technology goes awry. Hopefully it won't. So I'm just really happy to meet you all. I'm pretty new to campus. I just arrived in September, so it's just wonderful to meet people from the Brown community and the Providence community. So it's great to put names to faces as we go through tonight together. So I wanted to start with paying respect. Can you hear me okay? I have to make sure I don't touch the, sorry. Can you hear me okay back there? Okay. So I want to first pay respect to the Narragansett and Wampanoag peoples and the other Native and Indigenous peoples who were the original stewards of the land where we now have the privilege of sitting. And I want to pay respect to their ancestors as well as present and future generations. And I just want to note that it's part of my personal practice to acknowledge that many Indigenous peoples continue to live and work on these lands. And through my work here at Brown and beyond, I'm really committed to honoring their ongoing contributions. I'm also committed to, and you'll hear about this across the next half hour or so, including a diversity of voices and perspectives in all the programming that I do, and hopefully that we do, including that of Native peoples. So I'm new, as I said, just beginning my relationships with local Native people and artists. So I thought I would start today with with sharing a welcome song that we commissioned at the Armory with Henu Josephine Tarrant, who goes by Josie. You can see her here dancing in ceremonial dress at the Statue of Columbus in New York City. And she is the daughter of Muriel Borst Tarrant, who is a current BAI and TAPS professor of the practice. She's also the granddaughter of Muriel Miguel, who some of you may know is the foundress of the Spider Woman Theater Group. So she has a long matrilineage that's really quite amazing. So I'm going to play her songs. If we could just take a moment. This was a commission for a series, basically a podcast series, a series of conversations that we had at the Armory last summer. And each time we kind of grounded ourselves with this beautiful song. So let's see if this will work. Here we go. Thank you. So thank you to Josie for composing that beautiful song. And part of our practice at the Armory was to begin with a welcome song. So we begin all of our programs, when possible, with an opening song. And so I wanted to just express that, starting this position in November of 2020, as Dietrich mentioned, we've had many meetings that were completely on Zoom. And in the middle of this pandemic, I've been thinking a lot about what does it mean to create, to start, to activate an arts institute on a campus like Brown in this moment. And so this period of reckoning, the global health crisis, et cetera, and thinking a lot about the charge that the president and the provost sort of put to me very early on. And so what I want to talk a little bit about today is just the development of a vision for a Brown Arts Institute, the mission, the artistic programming approach during this really challenging time. So just a second on our collective ambition. So this charge from the president and the provost was very much about positioning Brown. So thinking about how Brown might become a destination of choice for students, for faculty, as well as for local, national, international artists. And also this interesting combination, which I think I'm learning quickly is very Brown, which is this kind of fusion of arts practice, scholarship, and theory. So that was kind of a beginning premise as we started talking about what this institute could be. So all of you, I'm sure, are very aware of the kind of wider artistic and social kind of ecosystem, which includes the arts in really powerful ways. And it's been in deep crisis for a while, and I think the pandemic has sort of shown that it's in need of systematic change. So what does that mean in terms of the creation of a new arts institute? So as we thought about those ambitions, we started thinking about the institute, the new Performing Arts Center, which, as you know, is rising out of the ground, as an entity that actually thinks about and wants to meet these urgent needs, right? These urgent needs of both the artistic community, the wider artistic community, and the academic community, and is in a position to innovate for the future. So thinking through what that means, just positioning things slightly different, right? Thinking about what are the kinds of projects that we might collaborate on, which would demonstrate the power of the arts to address and challenge and really provide new perspectives on these critical issues. So one of the things that I think is really unusual about what we have decided, and this was very much put in place before I arrived, is that there's a dual leadership model, and many institutions are wrestling with what it means to have joint leadership, to have multiple leaders, what it means to have a single leader, and kind of debating some of those issues. So at the Brown Arts Institute, we have a dual leadership model. I'm the artistic director. Talia Field is the faculty director. She's coming up on the end of her time, so there'll be a new faculty director soon. And so we have been in a sort of debate now for over a year about what is the right combination of building on existing programs and curriculum and how we activate the sort of spaces between departments. So we are building an institute that lives in and amongst departments, celebrates and uplifts departments, but does not replicate what departments do on campus. So it has taken us some time to kind of wrestle through some of these questions. And then because we have this amazing building, what does it mean to bring world-class artists into our space, and what does that mean in terms of an integration of the academic needs and goals that we have and the vibrancy of these artistic projects? And I will talk about this a little bit more, just the building itself inspires just some really incredible possibilities. And so thinking through the dynamic use of space and how we might sort of evolve into a fit to program model, which means I have a project, it fits best in this kind of space, where is that space, as opposed to I have this space, what projects can I do in it? So that's opening up, I hope, some collaborations in the future. And also I think, and this is something that's been part of our evolution, is how do we accomplish, and Hillary's helping us with this right now, measurable and memorable social impact. How do we actually measure that? We can talk about it, but how do we actually measure that and demonstrate that? And ultimately, I think we will be well positioned to actually make change in the industry. So just to hone in a little bit more on my side of the sort of balance here, the artistic programming. So just to talk a little bit about some of the priorities, and I won't really focus on the academic side because that's really Talia's purview. But thinking about the artistic programming, one of the things we decided pretty early on in conversation with lots of people is that we do want to program all year round. And as many of you are residents residents of Providence, you don't go away when the semester's over, or maybe you do, I don't know. But the idea being that if we think all year round, what are the kinds of programming that we're doing in semester versus outside of the semester calendar? And as we think about these artists, maybe there's a way to support a bigger set of artists in a more kind of long-term relationship building kind of way, which is the opposite of what many performing arts centers do, which is what we call a roadhouse model, where every weekend, every day, there's a new show, a new program. So this has been shaping our thinking on the artistic programming side. Also thinking about how we uplift and support projects that are just germinating on campus at all time, from students, student groups, faculty, and also Providence-based artists and organizations. So really thinking through those times when maybe students aren't here, but other artists are here and we can showcase their work. And then the last piece is really about workforce development and thinking through the fact that we are going to have an incredible array of projects that we need support for. We need front of house, we need ushers, we need box office, we need technical folks. There's just a huge ecosystem that literally pops up around these projects. So how do we think about, as an institute, kind of intentionally employing people instead of thinking about an overhire system where you're just gathering lots of people and you're calling up saying, hey, I have something. Thinking about them as humans and more holistically about how we can support them. So the famous building, I want to see if this link will work. It may not. I don't know if you all have seen the, this might take too long. Oh, maybe not, here we go. This is just a rendering of the building. So I wanted to show you that. That's a rendering made by the architects quite some time ago. You can see that Brown Arts Initiative is still in there. And what's really interesting about this is to compare that to the reality of what's happening right now, of course. And this is really a game changer building. And so what you can see in this building and is sort of our hopes and dreams for the combination of the Brown Arts Institute and this incredible building. And I'll talk a little bit about it, and of course, feel free to ask questions after. So we're thinking about this idea of a hub and what it means to be a hub for collaboration, for scholarship, for practice. What does it mean to be a center for presenting really innovative, experimental, diverse kinds of arts and performance? I should say it is called a performing arts center, but we're really interested in bringing visual art, interested in bringing film, multimedia kinds of things, so it won't just be, the performing arts of dance and theater and opera and things like that. And what you saw in that sort of activated rendering is actually multiple configurations of one space. So what's really amazing about the way that the building is made is that these components can move in or out and create different size spaces and different kinds of possibilities for performance. And then below grade, there are some studios, rehearsal hall, rehearsal spaces, and more intimate performance opportunities, which is really exciting. And then again, this idea of the activation of the building with all these projects will bring some opportunities for workforce development and job placement. So I was just going to go through quickly. You will have seen these in the rendering. This is the main hall, which is really the structure you see when you go down Angel Street. You see the kind of volume. It's quite an incredible volume. And this is the orchestra configuration, which is the largest configuration, where seats are brought in and all the walls are to the side. This is a more intimate experience, like a recital, for example. Same space, but certain parts of the walls are brought in. And it's a bit of a more intimate space. All of the window, there's this amazing glass on either side. Those can all be blacked out, so lighting can be at its best. This is a bit of a strange picture, and I'm sorry, I think it is quite hard to see. But this idea of an end stage, kind of more like a theatrical presentation, same space, but different elements are brought in and different elements are brought out so that you have a kind of end stage proscenium feeling. This, which you saw also in the rendering, is multimedia, potentially surround sound. These could be screens with any number of visuals with no seating. So the entire structure is brought into a very intimate space. And this is essentially the flat floor configuration where all the walls are completely out and there's no seating. So it's completely open. This is probably going to be a common configuration that we use, especially for visual art. So that. And then downstairs, right below the main hall, is an orchestra rehearsal space that can also be used for other kinds of performances. There's a dance studio. There's an acting studio. So there's a number of components that we're thinking about how we schedule, how we curate in. So just a couple next steps for you all to know, and don't say anything beyond this room because nothing's official, but we have convened a PAC opening committee, and we are setting our dedication hopefully for October 2023. So we have basically between now, excuse me, and October 23 to open the building kind of officially. We are working with our arts chairs and our institute directors to start thinking about collaborations. We are convening a tribal arts advisory council, which will advise us on the engagement of Native artists, local artists in particular. We've begun some student engagement around the use of the building and then kind of rippling out from there. So I wanted to say a little bit about the PAC commissions and presentations, and this is all feeding into how the Institute and the Center are kind of working in concert. This is just an image from William Kentridge. Some of you may know his work, and just to say that this Performing Arts Center really is so dynamic that we hopefully will be able to do a show like this where you have large-scale projections, you have performers, you have text woven in, thinking through different ways and who are the artists who are thinking these really innovative ways. You may recognize some of these folks. Student groups, of course, there are so much art making that's happening on campus, either on the departmental level, on the individual student or faculty level, student group level, and of course a lot of the coursework that's happening. So we're thinking through how we schedule and curate the Performing Arts Center so we're able to support the incredible amount of creativity on campus. So one of the kind of sort of main priorities about bringing in outside artists, instead of having that Roadhouse model, we're thinking about a kind of cohort of artists who are innovators, who can advise us as we continue to grow the Institute, and they provide the kind of root of our programming. So instead of me sort of going out in the world and sort of seeing a million different projects and saying this is great and that's great and this is hot, and bringing them to campus, like actually investing in a group of artists and thinking through what those artists can bring to campus, what do they need, what can we support them with. So I'll just go through this kind of quickly just to give you a scale and scope of the kinds of folks that we're thinking about, if we can see them. They really range in terms of multidisciplinary practice. We're trying to be as diverse as possible in all the definitions of that word. We're also, as you can see, there's some international artists on this list. There are folks that are working in the literary arts as well as the visual arts. Dancers, performers, comedian. I don't know if anyone knows Hari, but amazing comedian. There's about 40 folks on the list right now. This is not a solid list. It's very much a fluid list. So these are folks we're going to start to invite to campus and to engage with them. What are they working on? What are the projects that they need support on? And so that we can start to introduce the community to different modes of interacting with artists. So the list, this is, I think, the end of the list. So it's, like I said, a fluid list. Some folks will be very engaged, some perhaps less so. But the idea is that we get a chance to invest in these amazing humans over the course of the next probably 5 to 10 years. That does not mean other folks won't be coming through, but the idea is that we have a group of artists that we get to know and that we get to support. And then just one note on this idea of creating an arts corps, which is maybe akin to Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, thinking through this workforce development piece and what it means to have opportunities on campus, as I mentioned before. And these are some images from the Armory, where our arts education program was really quite instrumental in introducing young people to the jobs that one might encounter in the sort of arts ecosystem. So you see a young man as the usher. You see artists who are doing special classes just for young people. So we're thinking through teaching artists. We're thinking through how artists are going to be on campus, but also engaging with our younger community. This down here is an all-student matinee, which is the best part of many of our productions at the Armory. We're really most enlivening and engaged with the students, all-student matinees. And then sort of more one-on-one opportunities with students and artists. So just a couple examples. So I'm going to pause there. I wanted to, hopefully, the questions, and I just wanted to kind of end my moment with Martha Redbone, who is on our innovators list, a really wonderful composer and singer, and she composed in honor of Women's History Month, since I think we're still in March. I don't even know what day it is sometimes. We're still in March. So a women's honor song that she created. So I'll just end with that, and then if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those questions. Okay, let's see if we can get this to work. Okay. So thank you. Any questions, comments? That was a sneak peek, quick overview. I know there's so much to dig into, so yes.
So, how much of this is for the students, and how much of it is focused on bringing in residents in the neighborhood and things like that? Obviously on South Angel, there's always a parking problem, and I'm just curious. You know, the town looks great, but it seems like if you can't walk there, that it may not be really something to reach out to the city or to the at least immediate neighborhood on the east side. I wonder if you'd address that.
Yes, it's funny. Every time we talk about this, people always bring up parking. It's like literally the thing. There has been a parking study that I've been told, and I've seen parts of it that show that on any given night, for example, if the orchestra's playing and there's 500 seats available, that there's enough parking in Brown parking after hours for folks to be able to take that parking. And we probably will set up a shuttle potentially from key places on campus so that for accessibility reasons, you know, people would be able to easily get to the PAC. So that is something that's still very much under study. But in terms of the first part of your question, my hope is that the audience is open. This is not specifically for students. This is for the Brown community, which includes Providence. And I think as we bring in different types of artists, it will draw in different audiences. We're working right now on a partnership with Trinity potentially. So something that can't be done in their spaces but could be done in this space would be a really fruitful partnership and collaboration, and so their audiences hopefully would feel very welcome in this sort of space up the hill. I think it's going to be a challenge to sort of figure out the balance and the alchemy of the flow of work, but I think part of what's going to be really magical about this space is there'll be so much diversity in the kinds of programming that hopefully it draws people in. You may not like dance, but then a couple weeks later or 3 months later, there's something that you do really enjoy and like, and so that will keep turning over. We're not just going to be doing Hamilton, you know, every weekend kind of thing. So I think it's a good question, and it's something that we're going to continue to wrestle with, but also thinking about student work in this space and providing an actual path to do that, to really encourage students to put work together that could be, you know, either in the main space or in some of those spaces down below. So I'm hoping that the variety will be encouraging, and we'll figure out some parking solutions along with maybe some extra parking solutions like shuttles.
I can ask another question. The way the presentation went, which was excellent, by the way, it appeared that the lower level or lower grade was going to be strictly for music because the way it was laid out and the fact that you could accommodate an orchestra, and that the upstairs would be maybe strictly or visual type presentations. And I was wondering, is that true? Or is that the way you're going to go toward, you know, your focus or goal? And also, might there be simultaneous things going on upstairs and downstairs?
Yeah, I do think there will be simultaneous. I think that these renderings are quite old, and they are made by the architects, so they're really meant to show the architectural features and how the building can be configured and reconfigured. And it's up to us to program the space. So it's true that a lot of the images are very music heavy, and part of what we're going to do next year, we're going to have this sort of tuning period from about March to October, September next year, there. And we're going to test a lot of different kinds of art in all of the spaces. We're going to test classes in there. So to see like how, some of these classes that require more support. Do we have the right equipment? Do we have the right sort of setup in the space to be able to do that? So I think that if you take a rendering of life in a couple years, those pictures will look quite different, and hopefully that you'll see the range of what can be offered. Some things will be specific, like the dance studio has a sprung floor, and that's particularly good for dancers and certain kinds of dance. So they may predominantly use that space, but it doesn't mean exclusively. That's my hope. Yes?
Yeah, I was wondering how you view the attractiveness of the Providence community for artists, and if it needs improvement, what needs improvement, and how would you influence all that?
That's a good question. Being quite new still to Providence, I've been excited to meet lots of Providence-based artists who have just different needs than student artists, and also meeting the leadership of places like First Works and Community Music Works. Just judging the needs of artists in the community, they're very, very different. A lot of it has to do with access and access to spaces like this. And so if we open those doors and there's a kind of fluid, this sort of path to the PAC idea for students would also exist for Providence-based artists. So a kind of clear and transparent way to make a pitch to do something in that space, which may, we're sort of debating on, is that always out of term? It's really nice to have Providence-based artists on campus during the semester. So those are some of the details that we need to kind of work out. But I think access is one thing, supplies, materials, grants, that kind of thing. The BAI during the pandemic did start giving out some sort of pandemic relief grants to artists, local artists, that were just like, here's some money. If you needed to pay your rent, please pay your rent. But if you need supplies, if you need other kinds of materials, so we're going to keep that going. So there'll be sort of layers of support, I hope. But also, given the different scales of these spaces, sometimes you need just a workshop space. You just need to work out some things with a small, nice, friendly audience. So that's also a possibility. So that's why the summer times and the winter, when semester is not kind of taking over all the spaces, will be, I hope, a good space for local artists. Yeah.
I want to say Yakuki for your presentation, and it was really nice to see Martha on there. She's very, very important for me. I'm a local artist. I did not go to RISD for art. I'm in the GAC program, which is weird for people because RISD's an art institute. And there is a huge schism between these institutions which have so much resources and those of us doing the grind, providing the medicine, which is art. So I'm excited to hear that there's an intention of building those relationships. I'm really curious about the youth engagement. I'm working with POD, Providence Open Doors, through RISD, which has been great, but there are so many youth, and they need these channels. And so I'm wondering, is there any kind of imagining around how to get the youth access and how to engage them?
Yes, that's a very good question, and thank you for that. So we, part of our work, our research right now is kind of looking at the Armory model, which has 3 components. So one, which you saw a picture of, is free, including busing. That's always a problem. Free student matinees. So that is built into the contract of the artist that they provide a student matinee. And when you get a capacity like 500, you could actually get multiple schools in. And so to start with the artistic programming, what is the program programming, what are the thematics of the program, who is the artist, and build from there. So you kind of have a matinee option, you have hopefully a core, this arts core we hope will have teaching artists as part of it. And those teaching artists, again, very much based on the model of the Armory, they go to the schools before the show and they help the teachers engage. Let's say it's a fellow, they're engaging with the material, with the themes, with the artist's take on the themes. They bring the kids to the show itself, and then they go out afterwards and sort of support the teachers in helping the kids process what they've seen. So that's a kind of direct way. The Armory, which again is a very interesting model, also really supports a kind of partnership model with schools. So really talking to schools in the area. The Armory is all across New York City, so they've like thought through how to reach different types of schools and engage in a longer term partnership. So we could think about something like that. We also wanted to study what people are already doing, projects like you just mentioned, thinking through organizations. We don't want to step on those organizations and the things that would support them in some way. And so for me, it's about the artistic programming and what it means to bring people to the art, but also bring the art to the people and to the students. And then I think the other part is the workforce development and introducing young kids, even elementary school kids, to the idea that the arts ecosystem is really broad. It's not just the performer you see on stage or the painter. There's actually a lot of work, right? There are people who are laboring to make all these projects happen. And so in figuring out how to introduce kids at a young age and give them opportunities, give them apprenticeships, paid internships, etc. And as that interfaces with Brown students, who are also would be given opportunities and can start mentoring younger people. There's kind of like a trajectory across ages that could all center around one artistic project. And so as we build those relationships, then thinking intentionally about including that in everything going forward. So part of what we're doing now is thinking through that more robustly so that we have a model that works, that's useful, that's not replicating what others are doing. And also understanding, especially the Providence public school situation at the moment, just like how do we come and how do we be part of the solution to that? And in many parts of the country where the arts is just removed from the curriculum, how do we help bring that back? So we're in the research phase of that, but as we start to mount these productions, it'll be an intentional part of the production.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, so we're supporters of the Brown Trinity MFA program, and we see all the productions, and I'm just wondering how they'll fit into your program.
Yes, that's a great question. We were actually talking about that today. So part of what is challenging is to figure out our relationships to the arts departments. And as an institute, our remit is campus-wide. So really thinking about collaborations we're going to be making across campus, including the medical school or the School of Public Health. So as we think campus-wide and even Providence-wide and the region, et cetera, we're also honing in on this on departmental conversations and what are the collaborations that make sense. We were talking today with some folks from the Brown Trinity MFA and just acknowledging that students now are really multidisciplinary. They may be coming in for acting, but they're interested in directing, they're interested in TV work or movie work. So just thinking through maybe some coursework that might be more interdisciplinary than what's currently offered. We have to make sure we're not replicating what the program does, but maybe there's an evolution there. So those departmental relationships are definitely kind of under the magnifying glass right now. Yes.
Another question.
Yeah.
The list or the several pages that you showed of world-class artists that have been invited, very impressive. And what I'm wondering is, are these like in the bag that they're coming, or are they looking for certain aspects of what the program offers that you elucidated on earlier as a part of their willingness to participate What's happening?
Yeah, I went quickly through the list for kind of deliberately, partly because this is a list in formation. It's many of them are people that I know and have worked with in the past, not all. Part of what we're trying to do is get a balance of discipline, race, gender, location, where people are from. So there's a kind of subtracting and adding happening quite a lot with this list. But we are starting to invite people to campus, and so our hope is that as we become able to give hard hat tours, safe ones in the pack, we can start to invite artists from this list. We're going to start doing that in April, and just introduce them to the building, introduce them to Brown if they don't already know what we do here and what this community is about. And then we're going to start asking them to dream in this space and put forward some proposals of how they might produce something in this space, or do something with students on campus, or do something in, downtown Providence. What coming from them do they need, do they want, that we can help them with? And then some of these folks are not going to be interested, right? Some will drop off the list, others may be added. As we try to get a good balance of diversity, that's going to be a challenge, which is why it's a fluid list and not a solid list. So that's kind of our approach, and several have already said they're coming and are super excited, and so we'll see how it goes. It's definitely not like these are the people who are coming, and keep your eyes open for them. So it's still in motion. Yeah. Yes.
So, 2 words that I would love to hear are jazz and comedy.
Nice.
Because I think after the president, who shall not be named, and the pandemic and the war and everything else that's going to happen between now and when you open in 2023, we're going to need both jazz and comedy to pull us through. And so I think both of those things also are missing mostly on college campuses. So they're definitely niche to be filled there. The second city in Chicago actually has their own film school integrated within that, and that's a good model for what we could do. And then in terms of jazz, it's obviously diverse and it promotes social change historically, and this seems well suited for both those types of
yes, thank you.
interesting genres. So I hope that they'll fit in.
I hope so too. Yeah, thank you. Any last questions? Well, thank you.
Then, before I thank our speaker, I have 2 announcements really. One is that next door there are 2 exhibitions that are staged by our graduate students in the MA program. They're open right now. One is about the history of coffee and the culture of coffee. And fairly recently, you could still, like an hour ago, you could still actually get some coffee in there. I don't drink coffee today, but one thing. The other one is about the North Burial Ground and about people who have been buried there without necessarily relatives present and so on by the city, and some unmarked graves. Very beautiful, both very beautiful installations. So please have a look just down the hallway here. And of course, as always, I would love to invite you to join us in the music room for wine and food and more conversation with Avery. And I just want to say I completely agree. That list that you showed is amazing, all the initiatives that you're planning, and it has been such a pleasure to hear from you and to finally meet you, of course. And this was really terrific. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.